Welcome to the beach, everyone. My name is Rachel Easton. I am the Education Director for Harbor Wild Watch, and I'm out here at Kopachuck State Park today to give you a little low tide beach walk. So we're going to be walking along. Feel free to ask any questions into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. Although, of course, it is hard to walk and talk and not step on creatures at the same time. We're going to catch up and spend some time talking to our community scientists who are doing their beach monitoring protocols over there. We're also going to investigate several different habitats here on the beach because this is an incredibly diverse and productive habitat here in the intertidal zone. We have an extreme low tide today. It's about a negative, I think, 3.5 foot tide. So that's 3.5 vertical feet below average. We have 2 high tides and 2 low tides every single day here in the Pacific Northwest. And when the sun and the moon pull together on the same axis, they give us these exceptionally low tides. So let's flip things around and show you where I am today. It is about 55 degrees right now, but I think it's supposed to get up to 65 today. And we are in this beautiful forested habitat. You can see the high banks there. That's pretty typical of a lot of this region. The body of water that we're looking at is the Salish Sea, or you may know it as the Puget Sound. This is one of the most incredible and unique ecosystems in the world. And in 2009, scientists realized we didn't really have a good term for how to describe the Puget Sound, the Straits of Juan de Fuca, and the Georgia Basin. And that's pretty much the way people phrased it. And that's a bit of a mouthful. And so a bunch of Canadian and American scientists got together and decided that we should have a term for this body of water, and one that honors the original people who call this place their home. And so the term Salish Sea was adopted in 2009, and that pays tribute to the many different tribes that speak the Coast Salish dialect. They're named after their language. So we are approaching kind of the lowest point of the tide, but it's still going out, so we have a bit of opportunity to see that. I'm trying to adjust trying out a filter on my lens here today. Trying to see that. Thanks to everybody who used the new function that we have through TikTok to schedule these live events and have you kind of register or RSVP for them. That is super fun for us, and I'm fingers crossed, hopeful that this is going to be available after the fact on our TikTok page. So hopefully you can see some of the squirting that is happening here. This is a huge clam bed that we're in, many different species of clams. Let's look closer and see if I can show you one easily. It's hard because they squirt and then they kind of go down. But basically all these little holes that you see are here. Oh, and you might be able to hear the tube worms. I'm using my microphone right now because it's quite windy out. But there is this kind of sound, and that is the tube worms moving up and down inside their shells and the water moving around their bodies. I don't see tube worms, but I do see a little snail foot. I believe this is a Necarious snail. And this is a scavenger type snail with a fairly small shell and a little foot. And they are really good at finding dead stuff in the sand. And they can travel on the surface or they can travel underneath. And they use this little proboscis. It sticks up and it just cracks me up because it looks like their nose just popping out to sniff along the shoreline. We also have a handful of eggs. These are probably sculpin eggs, because sculpin lay about that quantity of eggs, but I'm not positive on the species, because unless you see the eggs being laid, most of the sculpin species look the same. So you can see that we don't have true tide pools in a beach here in the South Puget Sound region or the Southern Salish Sea because of the way that the sediment that was beneath the glaciers was kind of structured. And then the glaciers came and they kind of brought a ton of sediment here. We're going to see some of those big boulders and all that cobble up there in a minute when we get to it. But we have kind of a mixture of sand and silt and clay and cobble and gravel. But we don't have the type of typical sandy beaches that most people picture, like Florida beaches or Hawaiian beaches, because it's different geology here. But yes, almost all the holes that you see in the ground are clams. Sometimes they're quite large. Like this is probably most likely a gooey duck, which is what most of the people out here are digging for. They're very, very large clams. If you've never looked up a gooey duck, it's spelled differently than you would think. It's Geo duck. And I don't know who decided to spell it that way. I've heard that the native pronunciation of it is like gooey duck. And somebody just decided to spell it geoduck. So I can always tell when somebody's not from around here when they say, "Oh, do you guys get geoducks out there?" But we've got some beautiful eelgrass meadows here. This is incredible habitat for animals. This is some of the most valuable type of habitat in terms of biodiversity as well as productivity. So this grass is doing photosynthesis. It's sequestering carbon, which is helping to fight ocean acidification and climate change, which is pretty important. So we do get these kind of seepy areas where the ground remains wet throughout the low tide, and that's where we're going to find most of the creatures, because being exposed to air at low tide is the animals are adapted to it, but it is stressful. So they're under stress today for sure. Oh, there was a nice clam squirt. Sometimes you can identify clams by the size and height of their squirts. That was a big one. There's another big one, which is cool. Here's an interesting algae. This is called oyster thief or sea cauliflower. I don't know who names these things. It doesn't look much like cauliflower to me. They're these hollow little bowls. But the way that you can tell, or at least have a good guess for what species of clam it is, I know if I see a squirt that goes higher than like my hips, that it's probably a horse clam, because I call them the fire hose of the intertidal zone. We'll find some, and I can show you what I mean. But they have a nice wide siphon, and they have kind of these lips that cover the opening. And so when they squirt, it kind of creates pressure. And then I know that the water going up is going to travel far from the horse clams. Other clams, they're going to have smaller squirts based on their size or their, how deep they are, how much water they have in their siphon. So I guess you can't identify every clam from their squirt, but I can identify a horse clam by their squirt. How's that? So I know we're getting down to the lower tidal heights because the eelgrass is only really exposed during a negative tide, so when it's lower than usual. This is a plant that doesn't tolerate too much exposure, and simply because the sun will just bleach it. So it'll kind of cook it. But being a grass, it grows, its meristem or its growth point is below the surface, which is why you can mow your lawn, but you can't mow your shrubs because they just grow differently. So here we're getting to a patch of lots and lots of this sea cauliflower, which is nice contrast to the bright green plant. So eelgrass is a true plant. It has roots and stems and leaves. It even has flowers and seeds. But the algae that we see here, the green algae, the red algae, the brown algae, they don't have those things. They don't have true tissues that transport nutrients or water up and down like a stem, but they're just basically a multicellular algae. So we're going to see lots of these on the beach, and I'm going to show you the actual snail that makes them, because I've already found a handful of them today just in walking down here. In fact, I wonder if there's one right here. So what I look for when I'm looking for moon snails is disruptions in the sand. Well, no, this is not quite good enough indicator that there's a moon snail under there, so we'll keep looking. But these are the egg collars of the moon snail. Whoa, holy old ancient crab. Look at you, my dear. You are old. So this is a crab that's been in their shell for a long time, and I can tell because the age of the barnacles on her carapace is pretty old too. So she's, been in this shell for years and years. This type of accumulation doesn't happen within one year. And yeah, it could be a crab in their terminal life phase. This is a female. And the females have kind of a more domed carapace, and then their abdominal flap is big and wide to carry all their eggs. And so she is an ancient matriarch. I like to hope that she's let loose millions of babies throughout her lifetime. We will see some more big red rock crabs in a second. Oh, here's something that I do not like to see. Clamming, digging in the eelgrass beds. So this is really sensitive habitat, and this disturbs the grass, so we don't want to see this. And then with the holes, the requirement is that you fill the holes when you're done, because there's lots of benthic organisms that live here that need to be buried in order to survive, and then they also create hazards on the beach. So our beaches here don't have normal tide pools, and so this is going to create a hole that'll last for a month or more. But sometimes when clammers dig, they dig up cool creatures like this one. This looks like a worm, but I'm pretty sure it is a burrowing sea cucumber. And it is a burrowing sea cucumber, which they take on very worm-like characteristics for sure. But they are related to sea stars and other animals. And then look, here's another tube of something, maybe another cucumber. Oh yeah, another cucumber. Oh, you've been chopped in half. I'm sorry. I didn't do it, but hopefully a seagull will make use of your body. We're going to save this live one though. We'll just pop it back into this soft sand in the hole there and let it burrow back down in. I will probably, when we finish our broadcast, come back and fill that hole, but it'll take me too long to do it now. So let's walk along. The tide's still going out a ways. Oh wait, no, just kidding. Detour. So I get asked a lot, how do I know where to step on the beach? And a lot of it is experience and aiming for places where either animals are very tough, like if I'm walking on a rocky beach, I'm going to aim for places where there is barnacles, because they're very tough and can withstand being walked on. And then my boots, these extra tufts, are very soft-soled. But check this out. This is an Ochre Sea Star, a quite large specimen. It's my hand for some scale. And a very healthy individual. This animal is very well adapted to living life in the intertidal zone. They've got this cool pattern of skeleton that protrudes through their skin. So those little white bumps that you see are their skeleton. And then the squishy part that you see, the very slimy, is their gills. So they breathe through their skin. And when the water is gone from them, and it's gone out a ways, this star cannot move. So they use seawater as their blood to fuel their kind of hydraulic body system and transport oxygen through their tissues. And without the tide, that's pretty tricky for them to do. So she's going to be, you can't really tell with a sea star unless you dissect them, which I will not do today. But they will just be stuck here waiting for the tide. I like to be a little bit nice if there's water nearby and just give them a little splash to re-wet their gills. They certainly don't need that. They can survive it. But I have occasionally come across sea stars that have like sunburned. Oh, here's a gooey duck. A big one. So this is the siphon of a clam. And if I just give it a poke, it's going to show you that they can squirt water out. And that one was not very threatened by my poke. It didn't even go down hardly an inch. Sometimes they will dramatically jump down in their tubes and squirt water quite high up. All right, here's a great example of a red rock crab trying to survive the tide. This animal is burrowed down into the sand, and then they've even gone so far to smush their entire face, which is super, super cool. The ochre stars don't get eaten by the gulls because once they're a certain size, they are too big for that. Juveniles do get eaten, of course. That happens all the time. But the large ones, they go really rigid, and then they can't fit through like the gull's skin or throat. Good questions. If you guys have questions, feel free to post them in the chat, but I can't guarantee I will be able to answer them for you. All right, so let's just look along and see. Oh, okay. So this is my special talent, friends, finding moon snails. So I can see the sand is got this track, this meandering trail, and if I follow it, we're going to end up at this pile of cracked sand. And I know that there's a moon snail in there. So let's investigate. Now, I should mention that this is not going to harm the snail at all. I'm being very gentle with it. But we're going to just excavate it and see what's down here. And look, there we go. There's the shell. This is like a kind of mid-sized individual. They get significantly larger than this. I've seen their shells be about as big as a volleyball and their foot as large as a dinner plate. And so I'm going to just stick my hand down under and lift this animal up. And we'll just set it up here so I can show you how awesome they are. So you can see the whorl on the shell. People always say, oh, that's their eye. No, snails don't have eyes. They have antennae though. And this is a species that has 2 antennae right at the very top of their shell. They kind of look like almost like rabbit ears. And their antennae are usually only out when they are underwater. So moving through the sand, they don't really need their antennae so much. If you want to know what the foot feels like, that's this part right here. And it feels like if raw chicken could move. So it's very much like chicken breast. And I can flip it over and show you their big muscular foot. This secretes mucus, which is why it's so easy to just wipe that sand off. It's because the snail has created a barrier with mucus so that it doesn't stick. And people do eat moon snails, but it's not a legally harvestable species. Native people, of course, can eat them because they've been eating them for thousands of years, but for everybody else, this is an important predator in this habitat. Yeah, next time you're chopping up chicken breast, you're gonna be like, ooh, moon snail. But they're kind of amazing animals. They do have separate sexes, so there are separate males and females, which isn't true for a lot of snails. There are many snails that are hermaphroditic. Ooh, sorry, friend. Okay, I promise you, it's fine. But we can see they're pretty shell, and we'll just let this animal go right back down into the mud because that's the easiest way to survive the tide. So we'll just give it a little cover. Let it go about its day. Super cool. Let's investigate this little puddle here for a second. One, because now I gotta rinse sand off my hand. But two, because a lot of times you find creatures where the water is. if you have come here from our Facebook broadcast, which we did a couple of moments ago before this, we saw some interesting fish species out there. This is such a cool species of kelp. This is not its typical growth form. This beautiful curly Q. I mean, seriously, like if ever there was mermaid hair algae, it's that. But the more typical form is this, and it's called sugar kelp or laminaria, and that's because it contains the molecule saccharin. It's not where your saccharin comes from. They synthesize that in a lab, but it is a naturally occurring molecule, which is kind of cool to know. All right, let's head this way, and I can talk about how I read the patterns on the beach in the sand to avoid smashing creatures. So like I said before, I use soft-soled boots. I walk slowly. My head is constantly swiveling around trying to find signs that there are animals, not just because I want to show them to you, but also because I don't want to crush any. And so when I come across something like this, I know that there are sand dollars here. So this is the sand dollar. This is a little one. They get about maybe that big. And for whatever reason, it has been a terribly good year for a good couple years for the sand dollars. So there are literally millions of them here. So pile there, pile there, pile there. I'm going to eventually get over into a very large group of sand dollars, and I can talk about their features a little better when they're bigger ones. So I'm walking along kind of knowing what is okay to step on and what I should definitely not step on. And sand dollars are about as strong as potato chips, so you definitely don't want to smush on them. So let's see what we can find here. Oh, this is a huge moon snail. Wow. This is about as big as they come. So you can see for scale, this is just the foot. The animal's alive and it's moving. So we are out at Kopechuk State Park. That's Cuts Island off there. And we've got a really nice extreme low tide today, which is exposing all kinds of amazing animals like this moon snail. So before it gets too buried, and then I have to unearth it, let's just show you how big this snail is. So huge snail. So this is about as big as they get. And we can kind of clean it off a little bit and take a look at the shell, because the shell tells the story of the moon snail's life. So the whorl starts here, and then it's going to continue around and around and around. And if they grow at predictable rates, you could calculate how big it is just by how many spirals there are here. I like to work backwards a little bit from the front of the shell where it's laid down. And this snail has had a rough life. Check it out. We've got a break in the shell here, a break in the shell here, one here. And that is when this snail is almost the same size it is now. So that means a red rock crab tried to eat it, broke the shell, the snail repaired it, and then it happened, the next year and the next year and the next year. So we have this growth line. So about this much growth is a year. And then here looks like maybe a really productive year. So we maybe even had another year, maybe another year. And then back here, if I just turn it, you can see there was another break. So this snail is a survivor. A really, really tenacious snail. So people always ask me, are you hurting the snail by looking at it? Well, this guy has survived, or gal, has survived being eaten nearly 6 times, and is still kicking, just doing his thing, being a nice, awesome, amazing moon snail, which is just, I love to see. So let me lift her up again, and I can show you their operculum, which is the trap door that snails use. And again, I promise I'm not hurting the snail, but right back there, there's kind of a pocket of sand back there. Excuse me. Right back there is the trap door. So this animal can fit entirely inside of its shell. which is just so stinking cool. To make it go in, I would have to threaten it, and I would do that by pinching it as if I was a red rock crab, because that's how they defeat those crabs, is they just stay in their shell. They're more stubborn than the red rock crab, it's a lot of work to break that shell. It's incredibly thick. And so only big, mature red rock crabs are able to do that. Yep, so this is a living snail, a quite old one. I would estimate this animal is probably 15 years old. It's hard to say exactly without like cutting into the shell and precisely counting their growth rings, but I would guess. So this species is totally edible, but not for harvest here in Washington State. They're not on even if you have a shellfish license, you can't collect them. But they've been eaten for thousands of years. There are moon snail shells in the middens of native peoples going back thousands and thousands of years. The shells are also quite useful because they hold quite a bit of liquid. So after the snail's been eaten, the shell could be used as like a ladle or a cup. Very important. And we'll just put this animal right back where it was. Give it a little help. It probably certainly does not need my help, but it feels good. And then, so this is the egg case of the moon snail, and the way the egg case is formed, it actually comes out of the seam here. If this is a female moon snail, the egg will be extruded here, and it's made of sand and mucus. So they pick up just sand from the beach, mix it with their slime that their foot secretes, and then they lay their eggs in a thin layer in the center of it. So when it's clean edged like this is kind of how it comes out, and it basically just comes out and extrudes and curls around the snail. And then the snail, they do this under the surface, and then the snail turns upside down and pushes it to the surface. And then this is just going to stay on the beach for the next several weeks while the eggs develop inside. And there's maybe 500,000 eggs in a nice large moon snail sand collar like this. And then the little babies will be planktonic. Everybody loves the moon snails. It's like one of the most favorite species that we see here at the beach. Everybody loves them. And that's a really big one. But you can see there's tons and tons of these egg collars here. Each one of them. Ooh, so you got to be careful where you step. There's a red rock crab buried there. Each one of them has the potential for many many snails to survive, and then those will grow up to eat the clams, but a lot of their larvae are going to be consumed by clams, which is just crazy to think about. All right, so let's keep going along the shore. I'm trying to stay away from all the clammers. You can see the evidence that the clammers have been here, digging and raking through the top layers of the soil looking for clams. I really like it when there's a tide or a clam closure. It's only open for a couple of weeks, so it's not huge. But we see a shift in the people that come to the beach right now. You know, it's a lot of people who are using this as their supermarket, right? They're gathering the bounty that nature provides and putting it to good use. A lot of what's found along here is supplemented by the state, and so like we have oysters that are here because people love to eat oysters, and they bring in Japanese oysters that are grown. So here's a good example of what the moon snails do when they find a clam. This I think is an eastern soft-shelled clam, but I'm not positive. Yeah, it's actually very soft. It is a soft-shelled clam. You can see how delicate it is. And the clams use their radula, their tongue, to lick and scrape straight through. This is where the clam's muscle is that holds the clam shut as their form of protection. And then once the moon snails damaged it, they'll open it up. So if you ever see that perfectly round hole in a clamshell, you know cause of death for that clam. They will also, you saw that huge foot that they have, they can also like suffocate the clams as well. So by suffocating, they don't, like sometimes you'll see a hole that's like only partially drilled in instead of going all the way through. Okay, I'm trying not to walk across the eelgrass because it's so delicate, so let's go walk kind of around. Let's see what we can. I gotta get kind of out of this habitat because I don't want to crush anything. Okay. Oh, here's another moon snail. Hanging out right on the surface, not even trying to hide. But there's footprints here from people, so I'm guessing somebody just kind of plunked you there. And since it's really hard to dig through the eelgrass, I'm guessing you would like to be placed in some softer sand. Yeah, so snails are mollusks, and they belong to the group that clams are a part of. But it's not the same species, so it's not true like cannibalism. But maybe if this animal is in the water, it'll show us their really cool antenna. Thanks to everybody who's commenting and liking and sharing this broadcast. That helps TikTok recognize that it's a kind of a cool feature, and they'll push it out to more people. And our goal here at Harbor Wild Watch is to inspire stewardship for this body of water and the inhabitants that live here. And we really want people to feel a connection to it and want to protect it. And so even if you're watching from like the other side of the country or from the other side of the world, because this is ultimately connected to our world's oceans, you have a role to play in protecting this natural resource. Yeah, so this is a really cool snail, and I mean, you can see they react to touch. He can feel me. They're a little ticklish. This one also, if we look at its shell, survived a red rock crab attack, but it's been pretty good survival ever since. So you're one of the lucky ones. Yeah, if you want to post in the comments where you're watching from, that's always good information for us to know. We like to figure out where people are watching from. So here's more of those sand dollars. And they kind of cluster together because they generally just settle as larvae together. And they're like, okay, well, here's good. And then they all just kind of mature together in their group. Starts out with teeny tiny ones and then gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Let's go this way, and I can show you the big sand dollar bed with all the mature sand dollars. You can kind of see where the beach looks black. That is, okay, I gotta be careful walking here. This is solid sand dollars. Like solid. I could not walk across this without damaging them, unless you know the trick. So if you ever find yourself suddenly in the middle of a sand dollar bed, the trick is to find dead ones to step on. Or step on the sand itself. So if you see their bodies sticking up, don't step there. So I'm going to step right there and show you a dead sand dollar. So the dead sand dollars, they're white when they're freshly dead, or even kind of gray. But if it's broken like this, or it's this color, then it's not alive. If it's like a full, beautiful sand dollar, this one is alive. I always joke that if they were really worth $1, we would have none left. But you can see their kind of spiny, spiky skin. And their bodies actually make up a lot of the sand that is here that's white. So, I mean, if you look closely at the sand, see those little white bits? Those are all just skeletal remains of barnacles and shelled organisms, but sand dollars make up a big part of that. They have a calcium carbonate shell or test. A live sand dollar, you can always tell because they'll never show you their mouth, which is right in the very center. Compare that to our dead one. You can see the mouth wide open, and then they also have a butt down here at the bottom. Super cool, right? If on the skeleton, and you can see it on the living ones too, they have that sea star pattern, which hints to their evolutionary history. So they are in the echinoderm group, same as sea stars and sand dollars. And let's see if I can get this one to move. Sometimes when you pick them up, you can see their little spines wiggling. They are so cool, but I'm not going to walk across that. It extends pretty far. I'm actually going to go. Let's go this way. So yes, knowing your beach, and then sometimes it's making judgment calls. You know, do I want to step carefully across the eelgrass bed, or do I want to try to walk around, try not to crush anything? I always recommend people go slow on the beach, because when you go quickly is when you're going to run into trouble. Anytime you're moving fast, it's harder to, decide where to step. Here's a good find. Got some eggs here. These are sculpin eggs, I would guess. I'm not positive. I do touch animals with wet fingers because, one, I'm a warm-blooded mammal and my hands are pretty hot, and these are all poikilothermic or cold-blooded animals. Look at all the sand dollars here. And I don't want to harm them or add, temperature stress to them. And then we do have oils that are produced in our hands. It's probably not much to affect them, especially because this is, you kind of worry about like your sweat when you're handling things like amphibians. But it's salt water, so they're in salt water. But the oils could be potentially damaging to something that's got really delicate gills or something on their skin. The one thing I don't recommend people touch is fish, because fish have a slime coating on them. But here we've got a moon snail hanging out. Again, so sometimes it's just as easy as walking along and seeing them. There's a little peek at the operculum at the back, their huge foot. And then this one had a run-in with a red rock crab that it survived. So moon snails are tough. And we'll just let that one keep buried back in there. That's a good spot to be where all the water is draining out. They're not going to run dry. And then there's a good chance that right here is a moon snail. You guys are tired of moon snails, right? No? Let's talk about their eggs, because the eggs of moon snails are super, super cool. And here is a big pile of them. I'm guessing a child gathered all of them up and maybe thought they were trash, and then somebody told them what's what. But the really, really big snails will lay larger collars. And this one is fairly mature, so I can show you maybe. The eggs are sandwiched in there. So it's like a literal egg sandwich, because it's just sand and mucus on the outside, eggs in the middle, and sand and mucus on the inside. And even very small moon snails can lay these collars. And so, that's a full-grown moon snail size. They're mature enough to lay eggs, right? That's kind of how we measure adulthood, is their reproductive abilities. And so the inner circle is where the shell would be. And the outer is where their foot is. So you can see the size difference. This one is laid by a bigger snail compared to this smaller one. And these will just hang out on the beach for the next several weeks, depending on the temperature and, conditions. They'll hatch into little baby moon snails in a little bit. Oh, here's another nice big crab buried down in there. You can't see me, I'm buried. Very, very good defense if you're a vulnerable creature. With so many people on the beach today, there's less gull activity, but it just means the gulls have moved down the beach to where the people aren't. So here's another clam. You can see the siphon sticking out. That's that hole there. That's what the clams are pulling water in. They also pull down plankton, which is how clams can also eat moon snails when they're itty bitty baby villager larvae floating in the water. And moon snails are important because they also clear habitat for clams. So if they go in and they're eating the clams, then they're able to have new space for new clam larvae to settle. So this is an older clam hole that hasn't been refilled. And you can see it's just become kind of this pool. And it might seem like this is a great place for animals to survive, and I guarantee there are probably some in there that are utilizing this as the tide goes on, but it still would be better if especially very large holes were filled on the beach. I wish the state parks did a better job of signage for that. They're okay at kind of policing, but there's not much education in terms of how to sustainably interact. Well, let's walk out into the water a little bit. I'm kind of coming up on the end of the park, so we might need to just turn back and walk the other way. But walking out into the water, especially where these eelgrass beds are, you can see lots and lots of cool creatures. So here's more of one of my favorite algae. Let me try to block with my shadow a little bit. The glare is awful today on a very cloudy, overcast day. And it's windy, of course. But this is a good place to find more mobile creatures. So things like crabs that can just kind of outrun the tide will be out this area. And I'm betting there's a bunch of kelp crabs here. If I just sit still long enough, I can find some of them. There's also a ton of little fish. You can probably see them just darting away from me walking along. And I move extra slow when I'm going through the water so that swimming animals can kind of get away from me a bit. Oh, so you can see how deep you have to dig if you're going to go after a geoduck. They are very determined not to be eaten, and they'll go down 3 or 4 foot, and then they'll just keep digging down as long as water can flow into that area. They can just kind of get a new grip on it. So here's a moon snail shell that is freshly eaten, and I can tell it's freshly eaten because there's no algae on the shell. There's no bacteria, which means it was pretty recently alive. So I would guess eaten in the last week or so. And very broken shell. Like, wow, dude, overkill. Whoever ate you. But you can kind of see that the entire inside, it's not like hollow inside there. It's filled with the animal's flesh. Sorry again for the wind noise. Oh, there's a big red rock, and I'm guessing, oh, it's 2 big red rocks. So this is the mating embrace that the crabs undergo. When you have a male, they can only fertilize the female's egg when she's soft-shelled. So she has to molt before that. All right. I don't think I can reach down there very well and pull them up. And I don't want to jeopardize their relationship because sometimes they'll just say, nope, I'm out. And they'll just go their separate ways. And then I feel bad. I have to find each other again. Lots of juvenile fish will use this habitat as nursery ground. So the babies mostly just hatch and instinctually swim close to shore. There's not very many fish that offer any parental care to their young. Almost everybody around here is a broadcast spawner, which means they just throw eggs and sperm into the water and hope for the best. Some people say spray and pray, which is, yeah, pretty accurate. Again, apologies for the wind noise, but I can't control the weather as much as I would like to. That would be an amazing power. Control the weather, control the tides. You just make it low tide only when I want to go to the beach. Oh, that'd be rad. Look at all the fish. There are thousands of them. And they just go out a little ways, and then they come right back. But you can see how pretty this eelgrass is so early on in the season. As we get later and later, and they are repeatedly exposed to these negative tides when it's quite hot out. As we get into the summer months, the grass starts looking real sad. So here you can see kind of some stressed eelgrass, probably from yesterday's tide. It turns a little brownish. And here's a loose piece that I can show you. That eelgrass is a true plant. It's got roots and stems and leaves. It even has flowers and seeds. And later on in the season too, it will get these kind of parasitic epiphytic plants or algae that grow on it. There's a specific red algae that only grows on the edges of the eelgrass, and it is a favorite place for animals to lay eggs. So you can see some creatures, tiny little eggs right there. But everything that's found here is adapted to living here. So it's not as though things are like suffering here. Here's another moon snail. And this is how I find them. Especially when the tide goes out really, really far. And they're still moving underneath there. They crack the sand as they wiggle. So it's very much reminds me of days I spent as a kid, and you bury your sister or they bury you in the sand, and then when it's time to get up you wiggle first and it cracks all the sand. I can remember my sister getting so mad that we would try to make a mermaid tail and it kept moving and it kept cracking the sand. But there's a moon snail under here, probably a decently sized one. There you go. See the shell? People always ask, why is it called eelgrass if there's no eels here? And there aren't. We don't have eels here in the Pacific Northwest because it is too cold. Our water temperature is maybe about 55 degrees in the summer, Fahrenheit, and 45 degrees in the winter. Sorry for the clicking sound. I'm trying to figure out what it is that's making that. It's something on me that is hitting my microphone. I apologize. It's very windy out here today. Here is a very cool and about to be super common sight here. These yellow blobs of snot are eggs of a snail called the Bubble Snail. It's a little, less than an inch long snail. And instead of laying eggs that are protected like the moon snail does, it just lays these blobs of jelly. What is this? Something. What are you? Oh, you're a baby sea cucumber. I've never seen one this small or just loose in the algae like this. Normally these are a species that sticks into like rock crevices and things. Cucumaria. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Guys, you gotta know how much your comments just help creators. Like every time you comment on our videos, our posts, it's something that's telling TikTok that it's a valuable thing and they should push it out to more people. And then actual people make these videos. So I read every comment, and I apologize if I can't quite respond to all of them, especially during the lives because I gotta walk and be careful where I'm going. But those positive comments that you leave on our videos, a person sees those. And the good ones I show to our board of directors because we're a nonprofit group and want them to know, hey, this TikTok thing is really cool and important, and we're reaching lots of people around the world and teaching them about the Salish Sea, which is the whole goal of our organization. So let's go check in on that moon snail we saw earlier. I can still see it. So just know your comments, at least your positive comments, are great. Oh, look at this gooey duck. This is a big clam. Love it. Oh, thank you, Tanya. The gifts that you give through TikTok too also help us. We're a nonprofit organization, and so we are funded through grants and donations. So here's our big moon snail friend. You can see making that cracked sand as they travel along. If you do feel compelled to give to our organization financially, we are a tax deductible organization. Gosh, what is making that horrible sound? Is that distracting to you guys, all that crinkly crackling? Maybe I'll try taking my earphones out and see if that fixes it. It's probably here, but you guys tell me if this is better, so I can always go back to it. And while we're here, let me plug in my battery pack. I love it. This is the only live you watch. Well, okay. Thanks. That makes me feel good. I come across lives all the time on my TikTok stream, and I always try to tune in for a second just so I can see if people are doing things differently than we're doing. This is a big red rock crab. We are at Kopechuk State Park. We're looking across at Cutts Island over there, also a state park. And we're in Gig Harbor, Washington State, on the west coast of the United States. Better? Okay, good. Okay, well, stick with this. Yeah, so we're looking at a big red rock crab male, and I can tell that it's a male by the size of the pinchers and also the flatness of the carapace on the top. A female has kind of a more domed front to back carapace. Oh, I can hear tube worms singing. I don't know if the wind is bothering you guys, but there's this kind of zzz, zzz sound. That's the tube worms moving in their tubes. You probably only heard it from really quiet. But this right here is an edible species. This is one that's harvested all throughout the west coast, and it's kind of prized for the meat in the pinchers. So it's much sweeter than the other edible crab species, the Dungeness crab. But there's less meat in the body, and so it's more work if you're gonna shell these animals. Oh, there is a he said there's a coin. It totally looked like it. This is what we call a sand dollar, and this is just a baby, and just a skeleton. A live sand dollars are they're everywhere. Look at them. So here's a live one, and sometimes if you hold them, they'll wiggle their little spines for you. Isn't that so cute? Love to see them. And there are literally millions of them. And I always joke that if they were truly worth $1, they would be extinct. It totally looked like a coin, though. You guys are absolutely right. Like, oh no, there's a nickel sitting there. Nope. Unless you're seeing something else that I'm not seeing, but I'm pretty sure that was it. All right, should we lift up the crab, though? Or should we leave him be? They're one of the more feisty crabs, so I usually hesitate a little when it comes to handling them. Plus, you know, he's just chilling in his puddle. We'll leave him be. And this looks like maybe, well, not super freshly molted, because I can see a couple of barnacles on there. All right. Crab, the people of TikTok have spoken. Let's pick you up. Now, I am a certified crab wrangler. I don't recommend you try this at home. It's always safe to touch a crab kind of behind their eyes. So if you are out on the beach and you want to like encounter one, you can give them a gentle pet there. That won't hurt them. Don't poke him in his face. He's got antenna here and 2 eyes. But if you are going to handle them, the way to do it is from behind. And then they open their arms and they say, "Give me a hug." And then you're fooled into giving them a nice embrace, and then they cut your finger. No. This is a very defensive crab, and they can be cool. After I've spent so many years, teaching people about them. Again, more big piles of sand dollars everywhere on this beach. Let's go walk and check out our community science folks and see what they're up to. They're doing a seine right now, so we gotta go look at some fish. Should have put that in the description. Maybe it would have attracted a few more folks. Oh, I can't wait for clamming season to be over. It stresses me out seeing so many holes dug and potential territory destroyed for these creatures. How hard is it to fill your hole? Just fill your hole. Ay, ay, ay. not very good at confronting people. Oh, here's a cool worm. Well, okay, never mind. It's half a worm because it got chopped when somebody dug this hole. Shovels can be very dangerous on the beach. I even recommend that kids don't bring shovels or buckets to the beach, because what ends up happening is you just end up torturing animals. I know I did as a kid. You make your crab city out of a sand castle and you put a moat and then you put 1,000 crabs in it. They're crabby and it's stressful and they don't like it and they've been moved from their home. But if I didn't have a bucket or a shovel, I wouldn't have been able to do that as a kid. I mean, ideally you just would teach your children to respect the wildlife. And what I do when I have kids that are very rambunctious at the beach and they just want to do something is I recommend you give them like a water bottle, something with a small mouth. That's not a bucket, but then they can fill up things. Holy Toledo, look at the size of this moon snail. That is a big, big animal underneath there. We'll come back and check you out in a minute. It's not going to go far. All right, so these are professionals doing. Do you catch all the seaweed? All the seaweed. There's no seaweed left on the beach because they have caught it all in their net. This will be an interesting haul. So this is a part of our beach monitoring. Stina is a beast. This is why she works out. Look at you. Look at how strong you're going to be. And then they kind of grab it and... Yeah, there you go. Okay. I have a hand, I can help make a taco too. All right. Sorry for the steady cam, but they were struggling here. So, we've hopefully caught tons of fish in here, and we're gonna bring it up. And then, Stina's got all of it. She's a beast. All right, so then, it's a mad rush to grab the fish and place them in the tub. So, got a shiner perch here, and we just carefully cup them and quickly plunk them in there. Oh yeah, we got a little juvie rocky. Pipe. What do we got? The water. Oh, that's just shoelace. I thought it was a pipefish. Oh, here's a pipe. So the pipe fish look very much like eelgrass. And so we're always really careful not to like step on anything. But all the fish go quickly into the container and then we will count them. So this is a seine, which is a net that's dragged through the water and then closed.
Yeah, I thought you taught me at one point something about the yellow string.
There's some
really heavy.
That's a lot. Look at you. You're so pretty. Come here, little
Totally the color
Set a
of
picture of that.
the penguin.
Oh, come here. I don't think I can do them one-handed. The ground is super wet, so.
Give you a wall of seaweed.
Yeah, there you go.
Can't slide through my fingers.
Smart thinking, Stina. Well done.
Really wants to.
It really does. This is a slippy fish.
Slippy slimy.
So now we just carefully comb through because there's lots of hiding things like pipefish, shrimp, crabs. Never know what's in here. So we kind of are pretty methodical about it. Combing through it. Sometimes we'll also catch things like this water jelly. So we'll pop this one right back out. But this is the habitat that they just combed through. So tons of fish in this place. And this helps give us a measure of biodiversity. But really, it's kind of just total chance. Who's out here at any given day. But this is a part of the procedure that we do in the summertime. Here's a cool creature. This is a kelp crab. The northern kelp crabs, they get called, spider crabs a lot. They just hang out on the kelp. You can see they blend in quite well with the brown algae that's there. Yeah, and each time we do the sands, I'm gonna just put this kelp crab back in the water because I know it came from up here. Have some kelp, my friend. There you go. Be free. When we do the sands, we kind of move down the beach a little bit each time so that we're not seining and reseining the exact same spot. But you would be surprised how quickly the fish, they kind of run away when we go in, swim away, and then they immediately come right back in and fill this spot. A bubble snail! Good eyes. So this is the snail that lays those yellow snot eggs.
Not funny.
Oh, they're so cute.
Does it have a shell? Or
It does, yeah. You can touch the top and see
yeah.
that it is a little firm there.
Cool.
It's clear, so when the animal's dead, it looks like a little glass bubble, which is how they got their name. Super cool to see. Holy cow. Guys, there's 330 people watching this right now. They like the fish content, which is fun for me because I don't deal with much when it comes to fish. I mean, I see them and I know some of them and I keep some of them in an aquarium, but it's not a part of my normal day-to-day job because most of the fish aren't found intertidally. This is what Sina really does. Gets low, points surf camera at something. So all these fish in just that one small net.
A really long drag, though.
Yes. So we're looking at some shiner perch. Those are the free swimming ones that we mostly see. Then the long skinny ones that are eel-like are gunnels and penpoints. And then the long skinny ones that kind of more hover through the water are pipefish, which is kind of the Pacific Northwest version of a seahorse. And Mike's gonna tell us even more about these cool creatures. And he is crafty. Watch yourself. Yeah. He's like, I will find a hole in those fingers.
They've got really pretty blue spots on their body.
I love their eyes.
They're called a pinpoint gunnel because...
Can you even show it? He's very feisty. He's not going to hold still for that.
Back near its anus, which it probably does not want me poking, it's got a spine.
Probably. There's the spine.
Oh my gosh.
Like, no. Very slippery.
And that's their max size, right? Pinpoints don't get much bigger than that.
That's about it.
Bigger.
Yeah.
Well, I guess scuba diving, everything's bigger.
Yeah, it's true. Where's your measurement?
The size of my arm. Oh, wait, no.
So then the other eel-like creature. We don't have true eels here.
Oh, it's brickleback.
Probably.
I thought, I mean,
There are many different
it's a
species
stochid.
that use this.
It's a slender coxcomb.
Oh, a coxcomb. I kind of know them by the, see the operculum, how it's like triangular.
Yes, they've got big pectoral fins, and then the name is because they've got a fleshy ridge right down the center of between their eyes. There's a different species out on the coast, and then we have this one in here. It's the high coxcomb on the coast and the slender coxcomb in the sound.
And they are fun fish to keep in the aquarium because they learn your face and they beg for food, and you can put your fingers in the tank and they'll come right up and snuggle you.
They also can breathe through their skin, so as long as they're wet, they can actually get oxygen while they're out of the water.
Yeah, a lot of people try to rescue them when they find them underneath a rock, and then all you did was just, move him away from its home. And they're like, oh man, now I gotta start over. And then the other long, snaky one, I think is that a crescent or a saddle?
Probably a saddle.
There's two of them. Oh yeah, look at those orange fins.
What's Anaplark?
Anaplarcus insignis.
What's the difference between a gunnel and a prickleback?
They are in different families.
Yeah, I was gonna say different.
And it differs based on the length of the dorsal, of whether or not it spines and rays the entire way.
Cool. Super cool.
So these guys are actually spiny the entire way. If you run your finger along them, you'll catch on the spines all the way from the front to the back. Whereas it should be only halfway for the other guys.
Got it. Can you show the pipefish?
I can show the pipefish. I'm going to grab this one. Well, I was going to.
Yes, and if you are asking, we are, of course, going to put all these animals right back as soon as we count them. That's what Stina's doing right there, is she's taking notes of all the things, all the species that we're coming across.
So this is a pipefish, and it's also a male pipefish. So pipefish are related to seahorses, and just like male seahorses carry the babies, this male pipefish has a bunch of eggs in its sac along the bottom of its body.
So cool to see. And they really do blend in very well with the eelgrass. You can hardly see them. Like, I'm always surprised when we do it seine, and I'm like, how are there so many pipefish? I didn't see any of them when I was walking through the eelgrass.
So this is a girl, so the girl does not have that pouch. She's making the eggs up in here.
Yeah, so the girls, I always say the girls are fat in front and the boys are fat in the back.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and do some counts.
Yeah, count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pipefish. 2 saddleback, 3 saddlebacks, 3 saddlebacks, 1 coxcomb, 1 penpoint, 1 tide pool sculpin. It's not going to be easy. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 5, 15. Shiner perch. And 1 graceful crab, 1 kelp crab.
So the big green one is a penpoint gunnel. A really strikingly beautiful one that camouflages.
They usually come in 2 different colors. One is maroon and one is bright green. And super slippery.
So the phrase slippery as an eel probably should be slippery as a gunnel. Love it. Oh, so beautiful, the color.
We should do our eye makeup like this.
We should. This is like my favorite color.
Yeah, so these guys, you can also help identify them based on those eye colors. These guys have a vertical stripe through the eye.
Yeah, and the color is freaking spot on with the ulva green. And see the pretty blue spots on their side? Oh, they're just beautiful, beautiful fish. And it's a gorgeous day. We're out at Kopechuk State Park in Gig Harbor, Washington, and we're exploring an extreme low tide as well as doing some community science. So these are our scientist team, and they've been out measuring and quantifying and counting, and now this is the last part of our monitoring protocol, and that is to do a couple of fish seines to help us monitor what fish species are just right offshore. What is the coolest fish you guys have ever found in a seine?
I've never found one here in our work, but here in Puget Sound, I did get a big poacher one day.
Oh, that's rad.
Super, super cool. We've gotten some surprisingly large salmon.
Yeah.
I think the juvenile sailfin sculpin.
Oh, that was cool. Out at sunrise last year. Yeah. Evelyn let that one go. It was so cute. She had her little shovel scoop and just plunk. Yeah, good. Yeah, so this is the Salish Sea. It is connected to the Pacific Ocean, but it is not ocean. So this is an inland sea carved out by glaciers during the last ice age. that left behind this great big basin that filled with salt water and has created this really unique habitat for all these creatures. And they're well adapted to this. They can be out of the water for quite some time. Most of these fish can breathe through their skin. And you guys are talking about bubble snail?
Yeah. So cute.
Okay, tell us about the bubble snail.
Call it a little dirt.
Little derpy eye spots.
Derpy eyes.
Yeah, so they do have eye spots, but they're super tiny and they're right on the top of their head.
Little black dot.
So they do have a shell. It's internal and it's very thin, hence the name bubble snail.
And they re-evolved the shell, right? They're not like snails that just made a reduced shell. They're like slugs that were like, no, we're going back.
No, I think this one is a reduced shell.
Okay.
It is pretty rare to re-evolve a structure.
Right, a feature that you lost.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, but...
And it's just so fun to see all the fish swimming. Oh, look, our tide's coming in.
You can see the shell. It's sort of sneaking out on that front part.
So like the bubble snail is yellow eggs.
Yeah.
All over the beach.
The yellow glob is not. Yeah, so tide is coming in. Look, our you guys were dry when we started. Which is why they wear waders, because they go all the way in. Our sea star that we saw earlier, now getting a bit of an influx of the new, fresh, oxygenated salt water. So this is great.
I was gonna like lean and then I was like, I don't want to lean.
If you want more information about our organization, we are a nonprofit based out of Gig Harbor, and you can go to harborwildwatch.org. I'm pretty sure that's in our bio, but if it's not, just Google us. It'll come right up. And Mike, in fact, this whole crew is they're all marine biologists. Dr. Behrens has been studying and teaching for many years. Stina is one of his students, which is kind of cool how that connection has been made, and they've been working together during our
Bring them over to them.
during
What made you change your mind?
this beach monitoring program. So this is a beautiful thing, but let me go back and find that moon snail. It's probably underwater now. Okay, here we go. Let's check out this huge moon snail. All right, I'll dig this one up so that you can see it, because I promised I would. And then this seems like a great place to kind of end, because our tide is pushing us back. Most of the eelgrass is covered now. Hope our clammers got the clams they were digging for. Otherwise, they're going to be swamped. So here we go. Here's the snail. This is a quite large individual. I like to check their shells, because sometimes you will find... Oh, we're going to help you out, little snail friend, because this is a female that has laid and completed this egg collar. So this female laid that egg collar, and she was going down to turn upside down and then using her foot force it to the surface. So let's clear off the sand so you can see this beautiful animal. They feel like if raw chicken could move, which is wild. It's a very, very large snail. They eat clams, and they're just so awesome. And this is a huge egg case. So the snails lay these, and this is great because she's finished making it. So this is their shape. And they will just leave these on the beach, and she'll go off and lay some more all throughout the spring and summer. Each egg case contains about 500,000 eggs, and they're extruded by the snail. So they kind of come out this direction. See this kind of overlapping of their foot. So this compartment is where, oh yeah, that tide's coming in. We're about to be wet. Which is good news for all of the creatures who are here. They're all happily getting nice new oxygenated water, and they're gonna soon be underwater, protected from the sun and the predators and the people on the beach. All the clams are breathing a sigh of relief. The phrase is, happy as a clam. Well, the full phrase is happy as a clam at high tide. So our moon snails are quite happy too. You know, if an animal without a brain can be happy, I assume they can. But I just want to rinse her off so you can see just how cool they are. And oh, yuck, gross. We're gonna take that off the beach with me. These snails are cold-blooded, so they are what temperature their environment is. And so on a day like today, the water is actually quite warm as it comes in. But as it goes farther up the beach, it'll cool down to about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. So if you see a big moon snail like this, you can definitely touch it. You're not going to hurt the snail by being gentle. But what is dangerous to them is when they are kind of left exposed, mostly just from drying out. So as long as you leave them where you found them, they'll be just fine. Super cool. This is the foot. Oh, this is a heavy moon snail. So this is the foot I can show you. And the sand comes off really easily because they have this mucus that they produce to help them slide through the water. Oh, sorry, I poked you right in your face. It's okay, she's gonna come right back up. And they can touch, they feel, right? So she can feel and probably somewhat taste me, because that's how they navigate through the water. And here's about a year's worth of growth. And this is a nice mature one, so I would guess she is maybe 13, 14 years old. And they can move. Yes, it's slow because they're a snail. Oh man, my butt is dipping in the water. I hate it when I do that. I keep a little rag like tied to me, and it's soaking wet now. Yeah, it is satisfying watching the sand come off of them because they just make the coolest mucus. So this is an animal. I have kept them in captivity before because we have a special permit to do so. But I don't like to because they constantly produce that slime and it just like chokes everything. And so the poor fish are like swimming through snail slime. So big, huge animal. We'll place her back in her hole. And she'll just go on looking for her next meal. We've left her egg collar up, so she doesn't have to do that. But because I want it to survive, we're going to push it a little bit deeper. Freshly laid eggs are a little soft, and if they get too dried out right away. But the eggs are basically in a layer between sand and mucus on one side and sand and mucus on the other. And the whole thing kind of just extrudes out of the female snails. I can tell how old she is because I have examined moon snail shells for years, and I've been able to kind of determine roughly how fast they grow, but it's all anecdotal. To know precisely how old she is, I would need to kill her and cut into her shell, because as they grow, their shell coils around itself and covers up like the growth lines. But these marks here, where you can see this line to this line, that's a year's worth of growth. Super cool. This rubber looking thing, are you asking about this thing? There's lots of them around. Oh no, you're probably asking about, hold on, the egg collars. So this is the eggs that the snail lays and leaves on the beach. So I moved the collar just into deeper water so that it won't dry out, because we've got another super low tide tomorrow. Not that it can't survive, but I mean, she doesn't care about them. She just lays the eggs and pushes them out and doesn't take care of them. And they don't need to be buried in the sand. Once they're laid, she just pushes them to the surface. And so they just kind of get left, but I wanted to give them a little bit more of a chance not to get pushed into the higher tidal heights where it would just be a little too dry for them. Here's a crab. Oh, two crabs. A little green short crab and a red rock crab. This is Kopechuk State Park in Gig Harbor, Washington. We're looking out at Cutts Island, which is also state park. And I one time walked all the way to that island on a super low tide and then got stranded there. And this was when I was in middle school, and I didn't have a cell phone at the time because that was because I'm old, and that was not a thing back then. And so we had to flag down a boater who went and told our parents that we were out there and gave us a ride home. So pay attention to the tide. That's my lesson to you there. But yeah, our tide is really coming in quickly. I was going to try to show you that sea star again, but it's fully underwater now. I'm not sure I can find it. If you're just joining us, we're kind of wrapping up beach walk at Kopechuk State Park. We had a really nice, extremely low tide today, and so we were exploring. Oh, there's that sea star. And just showcasing the amazing wildlife that's found here. We are experienced biologists. I personally have been doing this for about 15 years. And just look at that beautiful sea star. This is an Ochre Sea Star, one of the species that was hit pretty hard several years ago by sea star wasting syndrome, which began in about 2013 and just destroyed certain populations of sea stars. And we monitor that, and so if we ever come across a sea star that looks a little wasted, which is a funny way to say it, go home sea star, you are drunk, we report that information to other scientists who compile it and make recommendations, whether a species has truly declined enough to be placed on the endangered species list. And that happened in December of 2020 with the sunflower sea star, Pycnopodia helianthoides, the world's largest sea star. Their population is down about 95% from where it was before the sea star wasting occurred. Here comes a beautiful little juvenile red rock crab moving up the beach. Now that the tide has returned, it's safe to kind of move into this territory. Are you gonna hide on the star? Oh, you're precious. It's like, this is a good spot. I will just tuck in right in this little cave. So in a normal year, in like a non-COVID times, we would absolutely be taking volunteers. We do beach walks all throughout the low tide season in various beaches around the greater Gig Harbor area. But because of COVID and being extra cautious, we just want to play it safe a bit. We are not doing any of those, and all of our programming this year will be digital until the fall. And then we'll reassess and see how things are. Each one of us on staff here has vulnerable family members who can't be vaccinated yet. So like I've got kids who they're not old enough to be vaxxed. So sea stars are incredibly durable. Scientists have been doing experiments on them for many years, and I think the longest they can stay out of the water is 18 hours. Well, here the tide changes every 6 hours, and so really they don't have to survive that long out of water. So I'm at Kopechuk State Park in Gig Harbor, Washington. It is an exceptionally gorgeous day out, and we had some really nice, extremely low tides. I don't know of any East Coast organizations that do what we do, and the beaches out there are pretty different. Although when you get into more rocky habitat, like up in like Maine, I know there are some really cool similar habitats. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with East Coast stuff. So if anybody knows of a good organization, and you can post it in the comments, or go comment on some of our other videos, that would be great. I really do appreciate all of your comments. because the more you engage with our content, the more TikTok sees it as valuable and sends it out to even more people. And we're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to inspire stewardship for this body of water, the beautiful Salish Sea, and all the incredible inhabitants in it. And we do that best when we have a greater reach. So thank you to your comments and shares. And I want to mention, real people do read all the comments. It's usually me. So if you send us a gift, I'm the one who sees it. So thank you for that gift. I love that, Tanya. You have been stellar this whole day. But yeah, if you other ways that you can help support an organization, not just our organization, but any nonprofits or even just creators that you think are doing valuable work, comment on their things, let it play through all the way a couple of times. That kind of helps our metrics. We get information about all of that. So I have like the average watch time for all of my videos. And when I show that that's increasing, that's things that I can take to funders and say, hey, look how many fans we have on TikTok. Look how many people are following and paying attention and engaging with what we're doing. It's valuable. Please fund it, kind of deal. So thank you to everybody who is liked and shared and commented and all of that. I was hoping today we would find some squid eggs so I could show you those because they're super weird and cool, but it's a little early in the season for that. But yeah, this is a beautiful, so many comments about Patrick. Look, there's our red rock crab who was trying to hide with the sea star. I think he's abandoned that plan. Little juvenile running away out there. So great to see. All right, the tide is coming up. When I started standing here, it was not so high up my boots, so I think I'm gonna head in and see if my group needs any help carrying their gear up the hill. But thanks for tuning in with us today. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully you learned something and hopefully you had fun. And I'm really hopeful that you have now a greater appreciation for the animals and the diversity in this incredible habitat that is the Salish Sea. If you really liked our content and you want to make a tax-deductible donation, we have that available on our website, harborwildwatch.org. We're also trying to get more followers on our YouTube pages, so you can click the link in our bio and go subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can watch longer beach videos there. And then our Facebook page is still kind of the main place where we post our videos. So you can, does anybody still do Facebook anymore? I hope so, because that's where we have the most of our content. But thank you all for the gifts that you've given during this broadcast and all of the ways that you have asked questions and commented. Oh, here's the moon snail again. Dug down now. Looks like a different one than we saw before, but still very large. Snail. Oh, thank you, Maddie. All right, well, tide's coming back in. I'm now way deeper than I should be. The tide does not wait for anyone, so I have got to go, my friends. But thanks for walking with us. We'll do another live video tomorrow. I will see if I can schedule it. But usually it's kind of whenever our Facebook live event is over. So if you subscribe to our Facebook, you can virtually attend those events. You can kind of RSVP and get the notification. And so you can watch us on Facebook and then watch me come live on TikTok. Or just hang out here and wait. I love it. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We will see you again tomorrow.